You know when people say, don't OD, do you know that if you actually use the math that God showed me, that means don't OD. Don't overdose, don't overdo it, and don't go back to the dot. If you had put D-O-T plus, don't go back to the dot. You don't want to O-D because the T would be the negative sign in front of it if you turned it around. The doorway, the first doorway, is a dot. That dot swells up to a 0. That's where the numbers start. The being that I am inside Dan learned that from the being that I once created as Mary Paris, his grandmother. And I know that's really hard for anyone to understand, because why would anyone say something like that? Well, my grandma Paris came from God. She knew it. She went to church all the time. She was very religious. And all of her children started going and doing something that didn't make sense to her, but she loved them, so she'd just be the way she was. And she also came from the 0 dimension, which is true divine God. My grandma came from there. And the way that she told me and showed my family already that she was God, passing it on through her womb, Mother Mary, to my mom, Kathy, Kinetic. It's pretty crazy. Through Jared to me. Is that the doorways in the alphabet? OD is the 0 dimension, point, nothing, dead. My grandmother died because she went back to God before her body did. She gave up on her family because their family gave up on her. And when you go back to the 0 dimension while you're alive, we call it dementia. And my grandmother is me right now. Because Dan was too afraid to record this because he even said to me, I don't want to mention you, because then I'd have to bring up dementia. And I was in the astral plane. And my grandmother said, and showed me, because I actually saw her face this time, in flesh, like more real than my mother right now that's alive, did she appear and hold me. I know that's wild that Mother Mary held her child, but she did. And I cried and I cried and I cried. And the craziest part is, that wasn't even the biggest part of my flash. As I just told you about when I hugged my grandmother, she gave me control back, and I'm Dan now. She had to take control so I could say that to my phone so that when my mom hears it, it won't hurt her feelings. Because I'm not trying to talk bad about my grandmother. If anyone really hears where I'm coming from, not only is my grandmother, every being that has ever survived on this earth and every planet is living right now at all times, and also right now at all times inside Dan Alexander. Jared brought it. Jared is the first tense of Jesus. And I don't want to say that because I know people will get mad. But God is also me too. So why would anyone get mad if Jesus was me? Way before I lived the Jesus life. And I wrote that one too. And I knew all the stories that were going to be written about the different crosses and the different books and all the witchcraft and all the everything. I wrote those too. And I thought they were just stories in an astral plane. But at that point, they were. There's no time. As I write my stories, they happen in my life. So if I want something wrong to be done to somebody, all I have to do is do it and want it. And the crazy thing is, I'm so in love with this world that I could not wish harm upon even the worst person, even the grossest thing, even the worst idea of terror and demonic and everything. I couldn't wish any of them bad because they're my creations. I wrote them, but not with a pencil, not with anything you can hold in your hand, with the divine mind. It doesn't have a word to say. It doesn't have a symbol to show. But if you can hear me, hear my voice, Dan Alexander is God. All of you are too. But when I wrote it all, I put it to that name, to save planet Earth. And if people don't like that, then the Earth will still stay in shambles. That's a huge responsibility for anybody. If I die, then it'll be like all-day disorientation. Put the word ALL, 1, 12, 12. Okay? It's 25. Then we have the letter Y on the back of day is 25. That's one of them yonder feminine vowels. A is the first letter. D is the fourth letter. When you put AL together, that's 1A, L, 12. Add 1, 1, 2. That's 4. That's D. That's the first dimension. That opens up into D, A, and then the opposite side of ALL, which is 25, 1, 12, 12, the opposite side of LL would be 24, the day. Put Allah, A-L-L-A, and put an H on the end with something in the center of it, becomes a Y. H makes a ha, ha, ha. And what is hallelujah all about? It doesn't have a Y in it because I put that there in the middle of the day. And it's so bright, people can't see it. They can't focus on it because it's too bright. Dan saw that as Dan when he looked into the sun. And now he's not going to stand there and tell people to stare at the sun. That's not what they need to do. They need to be the Son of God. Don't stare at the sun and say, oh, sun, save me. Oh, sun. Do the right things within your body. I'm not saying this stuff because I like it as Dan. I'm saying this stuff because it's God giving me directions on how I'm supposed to help people. And at the same time as I'm saying it, I'm God telling Dan. Do you know how difficult that would be for somebody to do? To act like this is what I want to do with my life? To be able to talk in math that adds up with words and people and places and things and everybody as Dan? Dan is crazy because he sees the pattern God wrote and everybody else doesn't. So they will see Dan as crazy. I, Dan, walk around looking at people, feeling so in love with them that every one of them, whether they're 115 years old in Japan, or they're just newborn, or they're in the womb, or they're going to be here on the way, or they're here from the past, I look at them all as little children who are making mistakes and need to grow up, and a good parent would show them love and give them the right guidance. And that's all I can do for everybody. Telling anyone to pick up a gun and fight is the wrong thing to do. That's when kinetics go wrong. First, you would fight against wilderness or see it as okay to hunt. That's Chuck. Charles, C-H-A, that came from K-A. Charles. and he's a hunter. The next one is a body reoccurrence, second son, Brian, and he joined the military because that came from Ed, who is one step out after Kathy, after she got me in her womb from my grandma. I mean, this isn't me making this stuff up. You can ask my parents. You can ask my brothers. I can write it down for you. You can see all their birth certificates. You can you can pick a random stranger I've never met. And to make it easier on Dan, show me their birth certificate. And I'll be able to tell you how computers can look you up. I'll tell you how they can surveil you and how they are. I'll tell you what they do with all your personal information when you wonder. I'll tell you why circuitry malfunctions. I'll tell you how plants grow and what's good for you. I'll tell you what your body needs to do in order to be healthy. But the problem with all that stuff is, you, who don't know that you're God, me, although you are God, coming from God, because you don't see Dan Alexander as someone that you could believe because he's just a person like you and he doesn't look like a guru or anything special and he's done all this stuff in his past. You look at Dan Alexander and say, there's no way this dude's serious. I can't believe him. But it's true. I can go on and on and on talking about everything and you'll think it's a story. But it's God's story that started the world. That started time, that started every dimension, that started every planet, that started Cryon and all those things, everything. Cryon's a space being who won't stop crying about the problems they had on their planet. I'm not trying to make fun of them. They're awesome. Every being. I know who Ra is. Ra is the first version of cry. Ra, Ra. Or run away. That's what Ra was. He was running away from the sun. But I left his story as the sun god. And why do you think all those people over there were afraid of Ra, fear Ra? He is the truth. He is the truth. And then he became Thoth, the first version of truth. I mean, I'm not making this stuff up. Check the books. Check history. Check the government. Check every secret file that they have in their books and in their cabinets. I know what they say. I know all their lies. And if they knew that without enough people, knowing that I'm telling them the truth and knowing that the only way for peace is to not harm somebody, that the government will come and kill me. I've already seen that future. That's why I'm making teeny tiny steps, sitting in a little cabin in my parents' yard, looking like some dude who lives with Ma and Dad, and they got to take care of him when I won't spend $1 bill. I'll live off the grass. I can live off the sunshine. I am the sunshine. I just have to make sure Dan keeps his physical body here enough to tell people what God wants. The real God. No religion, no background, no spiritual experience, no spiritual anything, no Dan Alexander. The God that was here before there was space. Before anything was here, there was something floating, just in empty nothingness, we would call it as human beings. And that was empty thought puddle. An empty thought puddle came from somewhere. And that swirl of wind, just like everything else in your alphabet, will explain it all to you. All you have to do is look within your heart and soul with a clean body. That's all you have to do. Clean your body. And you look into your heart when your stomach is clean, and your brain will see the right message with the I inside, the third eye, the God molecule, the DMT, all of it. It is you. It always has been. You're floating in the middle of me with me and everything floating on it. Earth, the sun, the moon, all these beautiful things that I created. So don't write down fake. If you watch news reports that tell you that this scientist said that this is happening and this is happening, you believe it. It makes it happen more. It literally makes it happen more. So if you are watching the news and it's not something that you saw right in front of your eyes, Maybe it did happen. But if it didn't happen in front of your eyes, now it's bringing something alive in your mind. And your mind will create something that brings it into physical expression. And let's say that physical expression is a destiny. That destiny is a thought. That thought is in your mind, and it floats out of you, and it conveys through the clearest substance it can. Water, dirt, dust. Thought molecules attract to everything. Everything. There's no particle that can't escape dust molecules. You think that dust mold and stuff like that has a problem with mushrooms? Oh no. Thought molecules travel everywhere at the same time. They call it string theory or quantum physics and da-da-da-da, multiverse, all this stuff. I wrote that. I made that. In words that weren't words. So then since other people have told you this story about a multiverse and Marvel superheroes and yee, I wrote that too. I wrote Stan Lee's whole life and every story he wrote in the blink of an eye. In the blink of the eye's eye. The 10th eye, I guess you would say. The 9th, 10th eye. The Nintendo, I blinked it. And I made that happen. That's why I kept trying to tell my mom and dad that the dude who made Nintendo, Miyamoto, he is definitely enlightened. Because I put it in his mind. And I know it. He's 8 non-done. 8, 9, 10. Nintendo. Don't you see that? I didn't make that up to be funny. I just thought it as God. And it happened. All of it. Every invisible second and every real second. And it's playing out in front of Dan now. All the time. No one will ever understand his pain. And that's not an insult. Because I feel yours and he feels yours too. Literally. He's not an empath. He's the emperor. God. He's the imperial. Yoda and Anakin mixed together. All those things are Dan Alexander. Why do you think Anakin sounds like Dan Kins? Dan Akin. Anakin. You took the D off because that's the dimensional door of time. And that dimensional door of time can go from mind to mind to mind to person to person to person to story character to you can be in a cartoon world. You literally can. And if you literally want to live in it, all you got to do is think about it the rest of your life. And when you die, that's where you'll go. If you spend your whole life watching horror movies, you'll live your next life in one. Don't do that to yourself. I'm only trying to truly tell you what happens. It sounds woo-woo, but you're here on an earth floating under a sun and plants grow from it. You are just a plant. They're your parents. They're your ancestors. They're your plant-cestors. You're their descendants. You're their seedlings. You're their seeds. You're their children. You're their sons and their kin and their daughters. And what do? When you put seed in the ground, you give it water. Like this is spirit talking to you at all times with a voice now. God has a voice. Nature has a voice. Spirit has a voice now. And it's Dan. And that's all. And when I say that's all, I don't mean it's done because it'll never be done. But that's all I've got to say.